be this episode just so we can share some information and some great content here. Thank you for being here. And as we get started, I'm going to just hand it over to Ruben to introduce our FLC sponsor.
Wonderful. Can everybody hear me now? Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are joining us. It is a pleasure to welcome all of you to this edition of Connect and Collaborate. This is a very useful platform and format to get to know experienced technology scouts from different parts of the industry and to ask questions about how you as a technology transfer officer can better interact with them to present your technologies. I want to thank each and every one of the speakers that are going to be in our panel today. And just so you know how this is going to run, we are going to ask each of the speakers to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their company and how they like to work with technology transfer offices in sourcing ideas and sourcing technologies. And after we do that, we'll go around there doing that for about an hour. And after that, we're going to break into 2 breakout rooms where you have a chance to have a more intimate discussion with the panelists in that breakout room. Let me know if I'm missing anything else that I need to say, Colleen. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and get started.
The only other thing that we want to make sure that we do is thank our sponsor. So Corinne Hindenacht, if you can join us, and you can share slides to give a brief presentation of who the FLC is and why they joined this event.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate that. It's wonderful to be here with you all for Connect and Collaborate. If you don't know who the FLC are, we are a consortium of all of the federal laboratories in the United States. By Fed Labs, what we mean are labs with intramural research funding. So those are groups where the researchers are housed in the federal system, they're federal employees, and they are therefore then federal labs. Let me share my slides with you real quick, just super brief. My screen set up here. Okay. All right, so partnering with Fed Labs, we're a wonderful group to work with, and the FLC's benefit is that we are the kind of clearinghouse for it. So you may have relationships with other individual Fed Labs who might be in your backyard or you have partnering agreements with, but if they don't have exactly what you're looking for, we have access to 300 plus federal laboratories across the federal government. So in a lot of different agencies that do have that R&D funding. We represent the collective strength of more than 150 billion invested in annual R&D. So that's a whole lot of research going on in the background and ready there for you. We were organized in 1974 and formally chartered in 1986. So we've been around quite a long time. Basically, the way to partner with Fed Labs, we have licensing, just like you all do in your tech transfer offices. We also have what we call CRADAs. Those are cooperative research and development agreements. So just like you would sponsor research in a university setting. There are lots of other partnering mechanisms too. So if you don't find exactly what you're looking for in that individual piece of technology or through a CRADA, there are also kind of material transfers and facilities use space, those sorts of things. Also technical assistance. So if you're at a project that is at point A and needs to get to point C to be commercialized, we can help you through point B to find the right federal partner who can make that happen for you. Here are a list of our agencies, so quite a few of them there. Hopefully you recognize them. Basically, how we do this is we identify your need, we search our laboratory resources, then I put you in touch directly with a laboratory representative so that you can have that one-on-one conversation with them and determine what your needs and next spaces are. That's how you access the next steps for commercialization. So what's the best option for you all moving forward? And then you negotiate an agreement path and hopefully commercialize. So sounds pretty easy, right? You can look at our products on the market that originated in Fed Labs using our website at federallabs.org. You can see there we've got several things, including Gardasil, Apple Dippers, and Siri. That is your iPhone resource management that came from DoD information overload programming. We also have lots of other cool resources on there. Those are awards. So what's interesting and new in federal tech transfer, Lab Tech in Your Life shows you where things that you see in your everyday life, like Siri, are coming from federal research. Labs in Action are our success stories. So what are the labs doing right now that might be useful and interesting to you? We also have a learning center that has all kinds of information that you can teach yourself, all kinds of different federal processes, different types of, glossaries and things like that. So if you're unfamiliar with our terms, you can brush up on them. And then we have FLC Business, which is where you can find the laboratories, the researchers, and the technologies that are available. We have all the ways to connect. You've got my email. We also have Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. That's it for me. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm looking forward to the whole session with everybody.
Thank you for that refresher, Corinne. That was super useful. Can I just ask you a quick question?
Of course.
Does the consortium of federal labs have any limitations on how the investigators or employees can spin themselves out with companies? Are there any issues with that?
So it depends. It depends by agency. It depends on what the regulations are within that federal laboratory. So we do have so many of them, and they all have different little stipulations, but they're usually willing to work with you in any capacity that you need them to. I just got to figure out the right mechanism.
Wonderful. Well,
Ruben, can we ask questions?
Go ahead and ask one question, and then we'll get into the panel. Yes, by all means.
Sure. Corin, so this is interesting because we do biodefense. So we interact a lot with Lawrence, Livermore, Cyndia Labs, US Emirate. So if we work with you guys, we can get access to the tech transfer that's going on in those laboratories that could be commercialized.
Yes, sir.
Good. All right. So this is very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to help. Glad to make the connection.
Thank you, Matthew. I was actually very curious about the same. I've been trying to call my colleagues at Sandia National Lab and Lawrence Livermore recently in my new role. And I'm glad to hear that Corinne is available to help us with that.
Oh yeah, that's what we try to do, is we find that open door for you, right? Because it can be so hard to feel like you're running up against like a big ivory tower, big glass wall. But we try to find the right people for you to talk to. So happy to do it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my name is Ruben Flores Saib, and I am with General Inception. More about that in a second. But I spent 10 years in technology transfer, in VP and director capacity at Harbor UCLA Medical Center, UC San Diego, and USC. I recently joined this corporation that is well funded by VCs, and it's in the business of creating new companies to de-risk early stage technologies. Prior to my 10-year career in tech transfer, I spent 12 years in the corporate world, 5 of them working on technology in licensing and sponsoring research across technology transfer offices in the US and Europe and Canada. It is my pleasure to be here. It is my pleasure to be joined by such distinguished panelists. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to let each of them tell us their story, what they work on, how they like to work with you. I'm just going to go ahead and start with Matthew. Matthew, why don't you start us off, please? Thank you.
So what do you want? Do you want my background, or do you want to know about our company? Are we presenting now?
Yeah, I wanted you to go ahead and do your presentation. And
right.
if you want to tell us a little bit about your background as well,
Sure.
1 minute or less about your background, that would be super useful.
Sure, thanks. So I'm actually joined by my colleague Ryan Kane, who's on the line as well. So we're doing this together because we have a unique company. My background, I'm 15 years in industry, small molecule, large molecule, pharma, biotech startup, that sort of thing. Immunologist by training, PhD, and then an MBA. And most of my background has either been business development or IND filings and BLA launches. So I'm a development guy by trade, but then I find myself in a BD as well. Ryan Kane, give a 30-second intro who you are.
Yeah, Ryan Kane, Senior Director of Government Affairs, Business Development at Nighthawk Biosciences and our subsidiary companies. My background's actually not in science, but it is in politics and government affairs. I spent about a decade in that line of work, and I have over the past several years, applied it to the pharmaceutical sector, in particular our industry, which is biodefense and infectious disease, in which the government is your partner and your customer. So we'll talk more about that in our presentation, but looking forward to presenting today.
Great.
All right.
Why don't we go over your presentation, Matthew?
Excellent. You guys see the presentation?
Yes.
Great. All right. So we got 5 minutes, 5 slides. So it's going to be short, but we're a small company, so it works. So I'll do a couple of slides and then Ryan Kane will do the rest. At the end, we'll tell you what we're looking for. So we are basically an integrated biopharma company. We are called Nighthawk Biosciences. We are a biodefense and infectious disease company. So we focus on discovering agents as well as in-licensing agents in our pipeline to target really rare and nasty diseases that may be of interest to the national stockpile. So anthrax, smallpox, tularemia, botulinum toxin, but then also to the healthcare community in emergency use. So anti-venom for snake bites or influenza for pandemic flu, these sorts of things. So Skunkworks, we have 3 different subsidiaries. Skunkworks is a discovery unit that's found in New Jersey. We can build our own biologics. Ryan Kane and I do a lot of in-licensing for the company. Elucis is a subsidiary that handles all our biodefense needs. It also has a commercial approved drug called Anthem, which we'll get into in a minute. And Scorpion Biological Sciences handles both basically clinical trial material that and GMP that's needed for tox studies for an actual IND filing all the way to phase 3. We have a large plant in San Antonio, Texas, and we have another large commercial scale facility in Manhattan, Kansas. And where I'm sitting here today is RTP, North Carolina, where the headquarters of Nighthawk sits. So we're primarily focused on biologics, live vaccines. We don't do small molecules. We just don't have the in-house expertise, but we're focused heavily on biodefense. And for that reason, we have government affairs and other political connections, because mainly your buyer in this case is the US government and SNS. So I'll go to the next slide here. This is Scorpion Biological Services. I just mentioned to you, we can make our own material. So this is clinical trial material. We also do bioanalytical. We also service external clients. So this helps us because anytime you have an agent that's going to be sponsored by the US government, like BARDA, a DETRA, a JPEO, that's going to be used for a biodefense need, you're usually using taxpayer dollars. And normally you need a domestic vendor for that. So we're made in America and by Americans. And you need that if you're going to do something for the US government that's required to receive one of these awards. So we had just opened this facility in San Antonio. It's brand new. It just opened the doors the 21st of October. And we have a very large manufacturing facility that is opening up in Manhattan, Kansas. So if you have questions about this or any of these facilities, we can answer them later by Ryan Kane, because there's a lot of political support here because we're actually meeting the needs of the US government. So Ryan Kane, you want to handle Lucid Therapeutics?
Yeah, so Elucis is one of our subsidiary companies. Elucis is the marketer manufacturer. I'm sorry, is the marketer of our Anthem product. Anthem is a monoclonal antibody antitoxin for anthrax exposure. It is one of 2 for anthrax exposure that is currently FDA approved. And we have worked with the US government and partnered on this asset to the tune of a $400 million partnership to date, where currently they help develop the asset, and then now it is being stockpiled in the US Strategic National Stockpile. This is a business model that similar to Anthem, that we would apply to other products that we would in-license or develop on our own, and where we're able to take medical countermeasures for the defensive service members or the US population into the stockpile. We mentioned a lot about the political side of what we're doing. It's a very political business. So we've assembled a biothreat advisory board that really helps guide a lot of these initiatives. It's chaired by the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Richard Myers, Greg Burrell, who was the director of the National Stockpile, Jack Kingston, who was former congressman and secretariat of the Biosecurity Alliance, Dr. Greg Koblentz, professor of biodefense, David Lassiter, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for countering WMDs, Senator Mark Pryor, and Andy Weber, who is former Assistant Secretary of Defense for ChemBio. These guys are instrumental in helping us develop our programs, navigate the commercial landscape for biodefense and infectious disease. This is their bread and butter. and they're instrumental and working with any assets you all develop and that we license, we would pull them into the equation and they would help us advance these.
And before I get to the last slide, which is our asks, again, is a short presentation because I knew we were tight on time. The thing about this model, which is different from other companies I've worked in, your buyer is the U.S. government. So you write these grants, these contracts as well with BARDA or JPEO, whoever has put out these RFPs, these proposals that are in need, a future need for pathogen X or a pan-pathogen antimicrobial or an antibody like for COVID. And these individuals help us reach out to laboratories. Ryan Kane works in the Hill directly. We have to push bills and funding so that there's emphasis on funding for such microbial agents or antimicrobial agents, if you're talking about an antibody or a vaccine, because the need is so great. And what you're working with is mainly BSL-3 and 4 agents. So that's why I was interested about the FLC, because we work with some partners like U.S. Emirate and Walter Reed, and we just came back with Israel, and we've been working with groups out there as well. So you tend to work with allied states because it's taxpayer dollars. So there's a bit of a different sort of market you'd work with because ultimately your buyer is the U.S. government, but because of that, you're highly dependent on funds that come from Congress. Hence, you need this sort of board. So it's a bit of a different type of model, but the model that we run and what we're looking for is we go to these laboratories, these national laboratories, as well as academic units that usually go, we don't know who would want, a Congo hemorrhagic fever virus vaccine or Ebola vaccine. How do we fund something like this? We know how to get the funding, and we have the manufacturing, and we have the political ties, as well as the government network. That helps us build products in this really unique space. And there aren't many companies doing this besides maybe Emergent Biosolutions, which many of you may know. So these are the agents we're looking for. We are actively in licensing every day. We're talking to academic groups and government organizations and even small biotechs looking to offload or run partnerships. So we're doing a lot in licensing in-house. We have discovery programs and we have a commercially approved agent, but our pipeline's a bit empty right now and really need to fill it with early clinical or preclinical assets. Even phase 2 we're interested in. So we're limited by certain things. So we like biologics, large molecules, live vaccines, microbial vaccines, peptides. We can't work with small molecules. We're not doing drug delivery. We're not doing diagnostics. Here is a list. So you can think of nerve agents, bioscavengers, enzymes, acetylcholinesterase bound to Ig fusion molecules. These are out there. And then host targeting, infectious diseases, and even things that could hit civilian populations like pandemic flu or pan-COVID agent. And then drugs of low regret, right? A lot of these agents are going into the warfighter. So you're going to Syria, you may be exposed to, VX Russian or cyclosarin or gas gangrene. You need some kind of scavenger agent. Or there's a dirty bomb explosion, and now you have radiation oral mucositis, and you have generations of people suffering from radiation-induced damage. How do you prevent that, slow it down, or basically treat those patients? Or even better, like an agent against botulinum toxin if something is weaponized. And we know many of these have been weaponized by the US government as well as the Soviet Union, because we have these experts in our team. So with that being said,
Matthew, we should get going.
Sure.
No.
What?
I would say let's get going to the next speaker so we can hear the next speaker. Do you have any final comments that you want to make?
That's it.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I do have a quick question for you. How many licenses do you do every year from academic units? 1, 10, 5, 20?
Well, no, it depends, right? How much we can handle. So we're average we can do about 4.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. So that we're not a big shop, but academics is where we look because we're a small biotech and then we're looking for certain license terms. And we also like partnerships that involve STTRs and publications. Wonderful.
Yeah, very unique group. I hadn't heard about you guys. I'm really happy you're here. We typically, I hadn't heard of someone like you. So thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you.
I want to move on with Perdita. So Perdita, if you can go ahead and tell us about your background and then share your presentation. Tell us something unique about yourself, something that it stands out, you enjoy.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you, Ruben, and thank you, Autumn, for inviting me today. And thank you to the FLC for sponsoring as well. Again, a great organisation I wasn't aware of, so I'll be following up too. I'll bring up my slides and then I will tell you something about myself as part of my introduction. So let's see, let me just make sure they're full screen. So can you see that in full screen view?
They are now.
Great. So my name's Perdita Cheshire. I'm the Director for Research Innovation at CSL. And my background is in neuroscience, undergrad, master's and PhD. And perhaps an interesting thing about me is for a couple of years, I worked at the Institute of Neurology in University College London. And my job was actually to cut up brains. So people donated their brains to a brain bank. And my job was to take these brains and take them out of the box and cut them up for freezing and further fixing and dissection. And so that was my job for 2 years. So if you want a way to remember me, think of me surrounded by shells and shells of brains. And that's me. That was my life for 2 years. And it was as interesting as it sounds. So
I have a dear friend that recently passed, and he donated his brain to UCSD for research. So I understand the value of the work that you do. Thank you.
Yeah, it is so valuable, and we're so thankful for the people who make that difficult decision.
Right.
So I'll talk today a little bit about CSL and our areas of interest, and I'm going to give a call out for our industry call for proposals because that's running at the moment. So for those of you who aren't familiar with CSL, we're a global biotech company and we focus on developing and delivering medicines for patients with rare and life-threatening illnesses. As you can see from this snapshot, we operate in over 40 countries. We have over 30,000 employees, about 2,000 of those sit in R&D. Last financial year, our revenue was just over $10 billion and we invest about 10 to 11% of that back into R&D. Now, historically, CSL has been known as a plasma therapeutics business, so making medicines from donated human plasma, and that's still a huge core of our business. But we've really diversified and expanded, particularly over the last couple of decades, to include other platform technologies. And this is where we're looking now in addition to plasma opportunities. So there are multiple parts to the CSL business, but today I'm going to talk about two parts, CSL Behring. And CSL Behring covers 5 therapeutic areas that you can see here: immunology, hematology, respiratory, cardiovascular, metabolic, and transplant. And underpinning those therapeutic areas are core platform expertise in plasma fractionation, recombinant technology, cell therapy, and gene therapy. So think of CSL as being focused on rare diseases and focused on biologics. We'll also have a vaccine arm of our business, which is called CSL Seqirus. They're actually the 2nd largest supplier globally of influenza vaccines. And their core platforms are around cell-based vaccines and also self-amplifying mRNA vaccines. And these are the areas where we're seeking external proposals under our industry call for proposals. And this program is called the CSL Research Acceleration Initiative. At this point in the year, we're reaching out to research organizations across the world. I'm the head of this team for the US, so I'm reaching out across the US, and looking for institutes who are working in our areas of interest who may have interesting programs that could be relevant to this call. So under this call, we support programs in the region of $400,000 over 2 years. And these are research collaborations. So in addition to providing funding, we assign a scientific champion in CSL who is the champion for that program within CSL and is the point of contact for the PI so that they have someone they can contact. And we set up steering committees. We meet every few months to help troubleshoot, review data, work on the protocols. So they're highly collaborative programs. And particularly what we're looking for in this call are novel therapeutic candidates and novel targets in those 5 therapeutic areas. And if you'd like to learn more, happy to have a call. There's more information on our website under the RAI and happy to follow up. And we'll also be hosting some information sessions later this month for anybody who would like to learn more. So we've only got a few minutes, so I'll wrap up here with just some of the benefits of working with CSL. I think what is a real value to our academic partners is that we're a fully integrated biotech company, meaning we can and we do take things from early stage target discovery all the way through preclinical development, clinical development, manufacturing, and then we have the commercial part of our business that actually gets those medicines to the patients. And so the feedback we get from our academic partners is it's really that access to the other parts of the business, where we look at, what are going to be some of the manufacturing challenges with this program? What are going to be some of the clinical development challenges? What can we do early on in research to de-risk some of those potential roadblocks? That's the value that they see. The money's nice, but it's really having all that subject matter expertise on your doorstep that can really accelerate the development of those programs. CSL is highly collaborative, particularly with academic partners. We have over 200 research collaborations just in research through this research acceleration initiative, which was piloted in 2019. We have about 34 partnerships. And this is just one mechanism by which we engage. We're open to any kind of partnership, any kind of agreement structure. We'll find the right agreement for the science. And just finalizing by mentioning, we recognize how important publishing is for our academic partners. So we do want to highlight that CSL supports the publication of the outcomes of these programs. So I will leave it there and very happy to answer any questions. And thank you for the opportunity again.
Well, thank you very much. Impressive, the breadth and scope of what you all do with universities. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions in the breakout rooms. Just moving down the panel, I'd like to welcome James Holberg next.
Thank you, Ruben. Hello, everybody. So let me get to my share screen. Okay, great. So again, I'm James Holberg, or Jamie Holberg. I'm head of external innovation and licensing at MilliporeSigma. I've been in the company for about 15 years. In fact, I just celebrated my 15th anniversary. And what I do and what my team does is we primarily work with academic institutions and identifying and licensing new opportunities. Kind of a very specialized group in that 100% of our interaction is with academic institutions. So it's a pleasure to be here. Briefly about MilliporeSigma, we're actually owned by Merck KGaA, Darmstadt, Germany. And if you're ever interested, I could spend more than 5 minutes on this. You could learn about the history of Merck KGaA, Darmstadt, Germany, and Merck and Company, but actually used to be one company. But in green there, we're operating as MilliporeSigma, as well as our other companies outside of that. We are branded as Merck. We actually have three very big parts of our organization. We have about 50,000 employees. Maybe it's more like 60,000 employees last time I saw. So we're quite large. We have three main divisions: healthcare, performance materials, and life sciences. And that's the business that I represent. As you can see there, talking about laboratory supplies, research tools, and the like. It was very important, before I go on to the next slide, about our areas of interest and types of things that we're interested in partnering with academic institutions with, is that we don't require a patent for all the things that we license. Some of the stuff that we license, we do in license patents, but a lot of cases it's tangible material or even know-how, which is actually an interesting thing to consider. So you could have tangible material, you could have a patent, you can have know-how, or all three. But know-how is just as important to us as a patent might be. So I also want to, again, preface it by saying that it doesn't mean that we're not interested in patents. It just means that it's not required in terms of reviewing new opportunities. So the types of things that we're interested in are things like antibodies and cell lines. These could be reagents that are published, they're highly requested. Cell culture, 3D cell culture in particular. A new area of interest to us is glycobiology. Messenger RNA, for obvious reasons, with what's going on currently with vaccine development. The microbiome area, live cell assays and tools, mass spectrometry reagents and methods, things around next-gen sequencing, and lastly, synthetic biology. Wide-ranging, interests here. We're a very large company, so We're interested in almost everything that you could imagine, as long as it could be used and sold for research use only. In terms of how we like to work with academics is having a phone call with the inventor, a 30-minute call. If a paper's been published, seeing a published paper, and just continuing dialogue from there. So thanks for your attention. I look forward to hearing any questions from anybody later. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Jamie. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Jamie is a former colleague and someone that I highly respect and learn a lot from in terms of what I do as a scout. He's one of the most efficient scouts that I've met, if not the most efficient. So for all of you in tech transfer, if you haven't really thought about these opportunities to license some of your reagents, materials, or know-how, you definitely should be contacting Jamie for these type of opportunities.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on, I'd like to invite Sharon now to tell us about herself and her company.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I know sometimes it can get hectic in the middle of the day to take time out, so appreciate that. And hopefully you'll see my slides. So my name is Sharon Simonis. I work for Eli Lilly and Company, which is a pharmaceutical company headquartered in Indianapolis. We have sites globally, of course, in the US on the West Coast. We have what's called Lilly Gateway Labs, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then our San Diego site that holds part of our immunology and our large molecule discovery side. And then on the East Coast in Cambridge, we have a group that's focused on genetic medicine. And so we're actually going to be opening in early 2024, a pretty large footprint there out in the Seaport area. So look for the Lilly sign. I have been at Lilly 23 years and doing various roles of external innovation. I started out as an analytical chemist in the labs and then have kind of moved through different areas. And the biggest tip that I could offer anyone in tech transfer is to prepare very well with meetings for industry folks, because especially in partnering meetings, we get a lot of requests because there are many of you and not so many of us. And so I would just really encourage you to make sure that you visit people's websites, look at their products that are in development, look at their pipelines. A lot of pharma companies now actually post their pipeline from phase 1 on, and then look for their areas of interest. So for my part, you can actually Google Lilly's scientific areas of interest, and one of the top links that will pop up is a button that will actually go through each of our therapeutic areas, and you can click on links and actually see what we're interested in specifically, and in some cases what we're not interested in. So Lilly, from a therapeutic perspective, of course, a lot of people back in the day remember us from Prozac and all of the antidepressant areas, and then women's health with Forteo and Avista, but we've really evolved with the foundation of diabetes. A lot of people probably have seen a marketed product that we just launched that is hopefully going to do wonderful things for patients in diabetes and potentially obesity. So in the diabetes field, if you have research in diabetes, I think you have to just really make sure that you have very strong differentiation because it is a very tough field, and especially as great assets are being launched, there's going to be a lot of competition to be better and better. We also focus in on immunology. That area is both small and large molecules. And a lot of people probably know we have products out there like Taltz, which was actually uniquely identified at Lilly accidentally by one of our scientists in our bioproducts group. And because of how it helped impact patients, we now have a focus on immunology. For oncology, as many of you know, oncology is a very competitive space. So you have immuno-oncology efforts, which it's very difficult to translate animal models to human health. So if you have researchers that are involved in immuno-oncology, it's actually really important to get clinical data. So it can be very frustrating sometimes if you reach out to industry and they say, sorry, we need to wait until you have clinical data. Our oncology group is actually run by Loxo, who we acquired a couple of years ago. So they are actually running that business unit. they're primarily focused and interested in small molecules and monotherapies. And then we still have, a strong presence in neuroscience with neurodegeneration, with a focus on Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. I think everybody's hoping to win the race on Alzheimer's, because I think every one of us knows someone who has suffered from that condition. And I would say for basically all of our therapeutic areas, when it comes to looking at new and novel targets, being able to show that you can have some ties to human genetic validation is really important. And then finally, from a therapeutic area, pain, we are one of the fewest companies that actually are still doing R&D in pain. So we're pretty active on the side of pain, but of course, we're not interested in opioid related things. So again, if you Google, you'll be able to see even more details. And then from a modality perspective, I think a lot of us have seen some of the recent legislation that's coming through that's impacting the lifespan of things like small molecules. And so you will see a lot of companies kind of shifting to what are called novel modalities and looking at RNA and gene therapy and gene and cell therapy, just because of some of the the hardships of not being able to really get a value back from a small molecules patent life. And then finally, I think most companies, just like us, are very interested in disruptive technology platforms. So this is where I would encourage, if you have a researcher that's working on a rare disease, well, that rare disease might not be of interest to us because it doesn't fit within our therapeutic areas of interest. If it is based on a technology platform, we'd really like to see that and be able to work with you in case that technology platform can be applied broadly across other therapeutic areas. And then finally, Lilly has what we call Gateway Labs by Lilly. So this is a shared innovation accelerator model to help speed discovery. And unlike kind of the traditional accelerators, we actually give companies that are at our space direct access to Lilly scientists, our researchers and executives, and also exposure to our expertise, and in some cases do direct investments. So we currently have 2 spaces in the San Francisco Bay Area. We actually launched our first space during COVID and filled it up a lot quicker than what we anticipated, which is why we expanded into our second space. Typically, those companies tend to be a company that's kind of graduated more from a JLab situation. So a company that's looking at kind of raising Series A, not necessarily a seed company. And this model will be expanded into our Boston site in 2024. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavor of things that are happening at Lilly.
Well, thank you very much, Sharon. We always appreciate your, great engagement with tech transfer offices. Had the opportunity to interact with you a couple of times in the past. A question that I meant to ask James and Perdita, which I'd like to ask you, is not only the number of deals that you do, but how many technologies do you think you look at in a year? And then, is it 100? Is it 500? And then do you end up doing 5 deals or 10 deals with academia?
Yeah, I will say the output varies from year to year, but I would say the input is pretty consistent. So from an academic perspective, I look at all of the incoming academic things across the therapeutic areas and functional areas. And I would say that I get anywhere from 100 to 200 a month to look at and go through and vet. And that's why I said it's like when I get things that are high quality, where it's very clear to me that the person has done homework, those are how I prioritize things. So, if you want to get to the top of the list, eventually I'll get to you, because we do have a company policy that we answer everything. And then honestly, from a deal perspective, it really depends on what's hot that year. So, as you see different things coming about, one year we had a strategic push for novel targets. So, we did multiple strategic deals with academics to focus on novel targets. So a lot of it actually depends on what people's strategies are. And I think, one thing to really remember from an industry perspective, most industries' fiscal budgets start in January and end in December. So usually at the end of September, we're really pushing to close things out. And so we don't really spend a lot of time looking on new things because we need to get things done. And sometimes that could be a little bit of conflict with, academics that start in July and go to July.
Right.
And so sometimes things get missed because we have to walk away. So I think a lot of times there's a perception that maybe, industry is trying to negotiate hard or things like that. But I would really pay attention to the calendar cycle, because there are times where if you don't get in that calendar cycle, you may not get in the next year because initiatives and strategies change.
Thank you, Sharon, for that. I see Jamie back on video. Jamie, do you want to share some of those numbers with us?
Yeah, sure. We do quite a bit of licensing. We do on the order of 200 to 300 new licenses per year, but these are different type of licenses and products that we're offering. And then I would say we probably in-license 25% of what we see. So multiply that by 4 at least. So thousands of types of opportunities, but again, the nature and scope of ours is different, but yeah, we do quite a bit.
I just want to say, that just shows you the incredible volume of work that my colleagues here in Scouting do, which is not unlike the volume that some of us in Tech Transfer also have in our portfolios, right? Just Perdita, you wanna share some details about the numbers as well?
Yeah, sure. Similar, hundreds and hundreds over the year. Those would be the ones that come to us. We also proactively look for a lot of opportunities, and there'll be plenty of opportunities we will review, perhaps without ever actually engaging with the partner beyond looking at obtaining a non-con deck. So a lot, high volume, and I'll echo, what Sharon said. It's very process driven because we look at that volume. We don't want things to fall through the cracks. So, please bear with us. We've got a process. We work through the process. I'll point out that our fiscal year runs July to July. So if you miss the window for Lily, come to us. And I'll say in terms of the number that we of deals we do, I'm not in the licensing team, so I can't give you accurate numbers. We do a lot in research. As I said, we've got 200 active research collaborations right now. And then, of course, we have the clinical stage deals as well. I mean, I think we just announced 2 in the last 2 weeks. So, but as Sharon said, it's strategic. So some years lots, some years not so much, but there's always high turnover in research because it's the nature of research. Things don't work out and you need to refresh your pipeline.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Before I move on to David, Matthew, is there something else you wanted to add or?
Sure. Since you're talking about numbers and our field is so incredibly different, we actually find that a lot of these assets which can't find homes, especially in biodefense, since they're government funded, we can find our hands on it. A lot of them just kind of die in the vine because they don't do the traditional route. So we find almost 1 or 2 a day, and we actually are finding individuals will trickle in because of how rare it is, because there's only about 4 companies in this space. So we're 2 BD guys, and we probably handle about 15 different assets a week. However, we are very selective on what we in-license because these are massive commitments when you do, right?
Correct. Yep.
As I said, about 4 in total a whole year, but as many other have noted, you screen hundreds.
Thank you for that, Matthew. Yeah, that was important for the audience, the attendees to know. Moving on, David, I'd like to invite you to go ahead and join us and do your presentation.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ruben, and thanks to AUTM for organizing this event. They're always very productive, I find, these kind of events. Yeah, I'm David Luff. I'm responsible for academic partnerships with Chiesi. I'm part of our global corporate development group. There's a couple of us based here in Boston. Most of the team is actually based in Parma in Italy. That's where the headquarters for the company is. And I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking about the company. Not a lot of folks in the US have heard of Chiesi. So we're 100% owned by the Chiesi family. We're a privately held company. We were founded in 1935 in Parma. We have about 6,500 employees globally. Our revenues last year were $2.7 billion. Typically, we reinvest 20% of our revenues back into the pipeline. like I mentioned, we're a global company and we have a direct presence in 30 countries through our fully owned affiliates. And I'm just going to focus on a couple of company highlights. So in a matter of days, we're going to announce the awardees from our second academic request for proposals. This time around, it was in rare diseases. And we see RFPs as a great way of reaching out to the community and really seeing what's out there, exciting research that you might not hear about otherwise. A couple of years ago here in Boston, we established our global rare disease group. That's a big focus for the company, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next couple of slides. And then something we're very proud of, about 3 years ago, we were awarded B Corp certification. So we're currently the largest global pharma group to be a B Corp company. And you know, that basically reflects the company values, you know, commitment to the community, environment, sustainability, and all that good stuff. So why do we engage with academic institutions as a company? So obviously it gives us access to breakthrough research. Hopefully that's before the competition get a hold of it. It also expands our scientific network and helps raise Chiesi awareness. As I mentioned, there's not a lot of people know the company in the US, so it's part of my job to kind of spread the word. And also it increases the quality of early stage projects that we will ultimately, you know, bring into the pipeline if everything works out. And just to very briefly mention, our flagship product on the neonatology side is a lung surfactant called CuroSurf, and that was originally developed at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. So there's a couple of disease areas that we're looking for in the academic space. The company is involved in a third area, special care. But I'm not going to talk about that today because typically we're looking at clinical stage opportunities there. So on the air side, respiratory, the company is known in Europe for asthma and COPD inhalers. So over the years, we've built up our expertise as well as a pipeline in asthma, COPD, and we also have expertise in IPF, pulmonary hypertension, chronic cough, non-CF bronchiectasis, and bronchopulmonary dysplasia. So we're actively searching for opportunities at the discovery or preclinical stage within the air space. Then moving to the rare space, as I say, the headquarters for the rare disease division is here in Boston. And we're basically looking at three genetic disease clusters. So the first one is inborn errors of metabolism. That includes lysosomal storage disorders. Rare ophthalmology, we're mainly focused on back of the eye indications there. And then finally, a bit of an umbrella term, but hematoimmunology, we're looking for enzyme deficiencies, immunodeficiencies, as well as hematoglobinopathies there. And just to mention on modalities, for both areas, we're open to small molecules, oligonucleotides, peptides, proteins, monoclonals, you know, any biologics really. When I first joined the company, we were mostly known as a small molecule company, but we've really opened up as far as our modalities are concerned. And then on the rare disease side, all of the above, plus we might even consider novel gene therapy approaches to treating these tough genetic disorders. And we're also, just to mention as well, we're also open to drug repurposing in both of those disease areas as well. And the top half of this next slide just gives a snapshot of some of the deals that we've been involved in with small and larger entities over the last 5 years. And then, you know, why partner with Chiesi? So we're a global company, truly global. We have a commercial footprint across the US, EU, as well as emerging countries. We're a mid-sized family business. We like to think we can get deals done quicker than the larger companies. We also have a fully integrated deal-making team, and that includes an alliance management group that helps look after the deals once they're executed. And also we're flexible in how we engage with academic partners. So that could be through licenses, options, sponsored research agreements. etc. And we do see sponsor research agreements as a good kind of gateway agreements to build up relationships with academic partners. And also we have strong in-house R&D capabilities, and that's spread out across 6 global research centers that are shown in this little map here. So yeah, again, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak about Chiesi, and looking forward to the panel discussion afterwards. And please reach out to me with non-confidential summaries of opportunities you might have, and my contact information is there. Thank you.
David, thank you so much for your contribution. 10 years ago, I was desperately seeking to contact Chiesi because I had the surfactant from Harvard UCLA Medical Center, the synthetic surfactants that were developed there. But you guys have a terrific product on the market, and it's for the benefit of infants and newborns. So very, very happy that you continue to do that work. Do we have another speaker that on the panel that needs to go? Okay. If not, then I'm going to make a very brief presentation on General Inception, which is the current organization that I'm part of. And I'll be very, very quick. I'm really excited to have joined General Inception. We are a company, we're not a fund, and we work on creating companies. So we're a company that is well-funded by venture capital investors. We are based in Palo Alto, and we bring not only capital, but we bring resources to establish new companies, de-risk very early stage assets, and try to make them investable by an institutional investor within 12 to 18 months. So my mode of operating is I will do a license, but I will do a license into a new company that we form. We work on many different life science verticals, including the ones that I show here, and I'm happy to share these slides with all of you later. So we have a very broad base of interest. Again, we come in very, very early stage. So what do? We bring the right amount of capital to the risk very early stage, and again, make it ready for institutional round, seed or Series A. So on average, we do $250,000 to $500,000 of investment. That money goes exclusively towards the risk in that asset. We have access to partners that work with us on developing the product, whatever the product is. We have the supporting infrastructure, legal, recruiting, financial, IT, to help those new companies get going. And what is very unique about us is that we actually hire talent. One of the most important things, besides the money, is the talent that we bring to the table. So over the last 2 years since we were created, we've been able to start 25 companies with academic centers across the US and Europe. I should add, we're also based in Europe, not just in the US. So I'll be sharing more details in this slide later, but this is what I come in the process of new company creation. My role is to generate more deal flow for General Inception. So I'm back to being a technology scout. I receive opportunities for new company formation from tech transfer offices. And then I work with the 5 practice leads that I have in each of the verticals that I mentioned on evaluating those technologies. If they move along to the right, then we work with an internal group that is tasked with going ahead and creating those companies, negotiating the license with the academic centers. Then all of us together, sorry about that, all of us together work on recruiting the fractional executives to manage the company, and then secure that institutional financing round over the next 12 to 18 months. I'm going to skip that slide, and I'm just going to leave it at that. There are a lot of details in the way that I would need to share in the way we operate, and that would take too much time. So I wanted just to stop here and see if there were any general questions for any of our speakers. We have 5 minutes before we go to the breakout room, so we can take maybe 1 or 2 questions for any of our speakers at this point. Anybody? I want to pick on one of you. Rubayat, do you have any questions? I'm just looking at people's pictures here.
Not really, but really good to see some familiar faces after a very long time.
Thank you for
And
showing your,
congrats on the new gig, Ruben.
thank you. Thank you for showing your face as well and joining us. I appreciate it.
I
Thanks for
definitely
answering the call.
thought General Inception is a fund, but it's good to know what you're doing, so we should talk more.
Absolutely. I've already reached out to Bloomquist, and I'm happy to actually, I was thinking about working with you real soon. So I'm glad we're connecting here.
Awesome.
There is a note from Cesar in the chat. He is wondering if Ryan and others might be willing to share their contact information.
Yeah, we can share it. I mean, I can put my email here and Ryan can as well. It'll be sent to everybody on the board. Is that cool?
That's good for
No,
us.
one of the
Okay,
things
great.
that
Yeah, you guys reach out to us anytime, all right?
I love to see participation from Mexico. I'm originally a Mexican national. Came here for my PhD at UCLA a long time ago. Great questions. Any other questions for anyone else?
If I may ask, I know companies are mostly moving more towards partnering with the new core which are coming out of university, because the technology is more de-risked. But any of you have a different view, or agree with that idea?
The question was for who? Anybody?
For the industry folks.
Yeah, I would say in general, I think it depends on what the technology is and what stage it's at and what you're looking at. I think, there's been a big push on the academic side for economic development. So I think we see more startups coming in. So, we're in a group called Venture Science. And so we work in a fund of funds situation. So Lilly doesn't have its own venture arm, and instead we invest in multiple funds and work with those funds to look at their deal flow and things like that. And so, from the early stage opportunities, I think there are great jobs being done by venture funds like Osage and others that are actually helping academics form really good startup companies that really allow them to come into an industry setting and make impact, because a lot of us are judged based on what comes into the portfolio. And so something that is just a hit isn't at portfolio entry at our company. So if we can bring things in that have a little bit more work done with them and structure around them, it's always a lot more productive.
And I'm going to jump in and answer that question because our focus is new company formation. And I got to tell you that, as I mentioned, we have 25 companies that we build. With our funding, we aim to build 80 to 100 more over the next 4 years. And we don't have a mandate to stop right now. We actually have cash that we need to deploy. And we are aligning ourselves with strategic partners, big pharma, biotech companies, medical device, manufacturers, to kind of understand what is it that they need or they want to see in the marketplace. So to align our efforts, vertically with them as well. We're a new company. We've been doing this for a couple of years. We have a couple of successes already in our model, and hopefully more to share with everybody's help here. It's 12:30, so I'm going to hand it over to you, Colleen.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. So it seems that we're getting some influx of folks that are coming in, and we will have 2 different breakout sessions to get to know our groups a little bit more and speak directly with our panelists, which is really exciting to have. We'll open up those breakout rooms in a minute. Because this first session was recorded, we want to make sure that we're going to make sure that everybody who registered for this event has the recorded presentation so that they will all be able to contact you and we would be able to do this. Can all the interest lists from industry be shared with the attendees? Yes. So what I'm hearing is the interest list being the presentations. Is that correct? Is that what you're thinking about?
Yes. So basically, you know, whatever they're looking to partner around. I missed some part of it, but I'm not really sure if this was already shared, that, you know, some form of the presentation or the list will be distributed among the attendees.
Great. Well, what there, we can definitely share some information that is okayed by the companies. So we'll make sure that that happens. So why don't we open up the breakout rooms now? We'll have 3 speakers in each of the breakout rooms. And we will make sure that we'll be able to have a get to know you in those rooms. And thank you all for your help. And we're super
Colleen,
glad to have you all here.
Colleen, before we go, are we going to assign the attendees to rooms, or do they get to choose which room?
Yes. So Arlene, you have assigned everybody
Yes.
to rooms. Is that correct?
Correct.
thank
We'll
you.
be splitting everyone up, and thank you.
Great. So we'll open that up now. Thank you, guys. Get your questions ready for those in your room. All right. All right. I see Matthew is with us and Ryan is with us. So we have you guys together. I also see that Perdita is with us. And I think we have one more speaker.
Yeah, that guy from Millipore Sigma, James Holbrook.
Oh yeah, that handsome one, Jamie. That's right.
Yes, that one. Yes.
Well, thank you, Jamie. Good. All right. So in this segment, our goal here is to have more of a meet and greet with these industry scouts to learn a little bit more about their interests and to ask direct questions from the academic side of what does success look like in having a successful partnership? What are top tips that you would give to be sure that our invention or innovation gets eyes on it? So I'm going to start with you, Perdita. When we look at the second question really of when you are working with academia, what would you like to share with them is a road to success?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a broad topic, and I think you know, it depends on the technology a little bit and what you want. And sometimes that can be not very well articulated. You know, we see a really interesting opportunity and we're not sure what is it that you want to do with it. Do you want to license it? Do you want to spin it out into a company? What is it that you have and what is it that you're missing, and what do you want from the industry partner? So I think articulating that up front is really helpful, because then it helps us understand what is the path forward. I think, you know, CSL, we have an open door policy. You know, you can contact us at any time. You know, I'm happy to respond to an email if you say we've got a technology in this indication, it's this modality, it's this stage, any interest. So sort of that first screen of before coming to us with a full presentation and, you know, request for a meeting, that quick screen I think can save people a lot of time, both sides. And then talking to us often and early is something that I recommend. You know, sometimes we find that you know, academic partners want to wait till they've got all their ducks in a row. They're confident they've got all the data they need. They've got the perfectly polished presentation, and they're ready to go. And then we look through and we think, wow, that's great, but really we would like to see this piece of data, or, you know, critical to us is understanding X. So talk to us early before you're at that stage. We're always happy to give that guidance around, okay, well, if we were to partner around this, we'd like to see X, Y, Z. And then, you know, you can follow up with us and come back if you have that information. And we do that quite a lot. I have to say, some of the partnerships that have gone really well are where there's been a lot of early discussion, a lot of back and forth, us giving advice, the partner going away and moving something along, coming back. And so I think that works well. I echo the sentiments earlier that often you start on something small and discreet with some clear outcomes before you move to larger collaborations, larger partnerships. And I think critically, especially for things like the Research Acceleration Initiative and the kinds of programs we support under that scheme, having a really well-defined research plan up front where it's really clear who's going to do what, if it's a collaboration, and it's really clear what are the goes and no-go decisions, because science sometimes doesn't work out, and that's part of the process. So making sure that everybody's aligned, everybody knows that, okay, if we don't get this result or it's unclear, what do we do then? What's plan B? Mapping all that out before you even start the experiment, it can take time, but I think it keeps everybody aligned and keeps everybody clear on how the project's going and what the next steps are, and just really helps make sure that everybody's on the same path. So that would be the sort of top of my head suggestions. I'll let somebody else weigh in with their perspective. Oh, you're on mute, I
I'll
think.
let you muted.
Of course, I know. I'm just trying not to talk over people. Jamie, do we want to start with you? And then we're going to go over to Ryan and Matthew.
Sure. Yeah.
Do you have more on that question of how do you want to have a successful relationship with academia?
Yeah, I can be brief. What we care about most is access to the inventor. And that goes from at the start to the development of the product. I'm not saying to waste, his or her time, but access to the inventor, especially at the early stage of evaluating. I often ask for like a 30-minute call with the investigator if we're interested, because they know it best. They can explain it. I can make a decision really quick. So access to the inventor, to us is really, really key. I used to work in the licensing office, so I know that you see inventions that are not part of your background, so they're hard to explain to somebody, but the inventor can. So that's what I like to add.
Great. All right, Matthew, how about you?
Yeah, to what James had said, the same thing. Access to the PI, the guy who knows what's going on, he or she, right? So the history, because for the tech transfer and the method transfer, the SOPs, something coming in development, if it's clinical, it's even more complicated. You need clinicians and the KOLs are involved in the sites. If it's preclinical, it's usually the laboratory and the history. For me, working with the tech transfer office, I really know, up front, as Perdita had said, the type of deal. Is this going to be a joint venture? Is it going to be a straight license? Or we go to a steering committee? And also, where's the IP, right? So I need to know up front what's the valuation of this asset, because we actually look at terms faster than I would normally do at previous companies, where we normally have long, extended due diligence. Here, since we're a small company, we really can't afford a lot, and the type of deals we are a bit unique. We want to know what we need upfront to make this deal viable. What's the IP? And then is the PI even around? Because if I can't translate something into our laboratories and into our GMP facility, I don't have a product and the thing's dead in water. So yeah, all these are very important. Ryan, do you mind saying something?
Yeah, we, as Matt said, access to the PI is very, very important. The other thing for us is, typically clarity around the asset. Having information on the asset readily available is really, really helpful. Publications, anything else, it makes it a lot easier for us to do our diligence early and quick, so we can figure out is this something we want to move forward with or not. We're very eager to license, so we want to make it as easy and seamless for both parties as we can.
Great. Any questions from the group yet? I have a couple more in my pocket, but would love to hear if you have any questions that we want to ask our lovely panelists. Okay, I'd like to take an opposite approach. So what are things that you've seen that some tech transfer offices have brought forward to your company that really haven't meshed well or have been a deterrent for a successful relationship? What are your horror stories, and what are things that we can learn from someone else's mistakes? So I'll start with you first, Matthew.
All right, sure. Also, I can't disclose things. The mistakes we've made in the past is not getting the terms up front. That's the first thing we do now, which is completely opposite of everything I've ever done in pharma, which is usually a long, extended DD process, and then the licensing office is doing terms. We're small, and we have to move quick, and time is money here. And honestly, we don't even have a BD department. Me and Ryan Kane shares it. He's government affairs, and I'm head of research. So the mistake we've made in the past is we brought into the entire team, did all this work, did the whole FTO search, and then at the end, traditionally go, all right, now let's talk about terms, and find out that you're way off base, or no one wants to commit, or the market conditions have changed, and that, you know, for us, the PI or the team has moved on, they got another appointment at MD Anderson, they're gone. So they're like, oh, well, now the asset value is completely changed. We're not even interested anymore. So we're like, let's get the rate limiting step out of the way first. So upfront, we're talking what type of deal, upfront cash, royalties, CVRs, milestones, these sort of things, IP, FTO, and do we have access to the PI? These major three things. If one of these falls, it's over, right? And we waited to the end for the punchline. It was a bit too late, and you ended up wasting months of your team's time. You start burning people internally where they don't take you seriously more when you bring in new assets. No one believes you because, you know, you rip the rug out from under them. So that was a learning process for us. Just get to the meat of it early and fast. If there's a way forward, fine. If there's not, dump it, move on.
Great. Ryan, I just asking you quickly, since you guys are in the same team, anything you want to add?
I think Matt summarized it very well. Early, quick.
Early and quick. We love that.
I have a question.
Good. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Tanya Waite from the Research Foundation for State University of New York. And so I often encounter, especially in life sciences, that most companies want us to have our technologies further de-risked than we do, and that we're able to with traditional research funding. So any thoughts or advice that you could offer in this realm?
Yeah, who wants to go? Arita?
Yeah, maybe I can add a comment there. Something we certainly recognize, and it's something we're thinking quite a lot about. We're thinking about how do we go earlier even than the Research Acceleration Initiative? How can we support things to get to the point where they're ready for something like that? And yeah, certainly that's something that we're looking to do more of, is actually maybe a little bit different to some other companies, but go earlier, build a bit of a pipeline, get things to the stage where they're ready for further follow-on investment. I mean, we're also, you know, similar to Lily, we don't have a VC fund. We invest in other VC funds, but I think we think about where we can add value as a company, and what we have is a very large R&D department with a lot of subject matter expertise, and giving that guidance around that these are the critical steps, marrying that with, you know, here's a tranche of funding and it's pretty hands-off. Can you move it along to the point where we would then give that sort of follow-on funding? That's something that we're actively hoping to do a little bit more of, because it is a gap. And I think what we are interested in and paying a lot of attention to is the academic gap funds. I think that is a growing area, and it's very valuable. So I think that fills a gap, and I think that we are hoping that we might be able to do something similar at CSL. So watch this space, I would say.
Jamie, any thoughts on this one?
Not really. Well said. You know, for us, what we try to do is when we look at early stage opportunities is that, you know, what's going to be, we really try to focus on the market potential of the technology and what it can do in the future, what our return would be. So you can't, you know, so many different opportunities, but for those that we do invest in, you know, we feel like, you know, it's breakthrough, and the market potential is quite high. So but yeah, I mean, you simply can't fund every project, unfortunately.
Thank you so much. Matthew, Ryan.
Sure. So yeah, that's a common problem, right? A lot of things we look at are late in vivo, at least for us, where we can actually go and convince a sponsor, in this case, a government body, to take it to the next step and award us a contract, which we have to commit to. But for in the past, when we did oncology and inflammation at this company, and we changed gears most recently, and for some of the biodefense stuff, which is infectious disease in the end, we use the mechanism of the STTR, which is the tech transfer grant. And we've had a few of these successively move, actually one agent to phase 1 that we've now divested, but that came out of University of Miami. And that was actually 3 different STTR grants. So that kept being renewed. So when something was too early, it was like, in animals and really needed to go to guinea pigs or rabbits. We had to think about what would this look like as an IND, but the PI didn't have the money. We wrote grants with the PI. So we have grant writers in-house. We work with the PI as the SME. We use their shop, but we secure the funding and then we dump it into their shop and we co-invest and co-develop this asset to the point where then we have rights to license it back. So it's like the license is then delayed, but you give funding to get it to the point where it's appropriate to come in-house. And thank God there's these mechanisms from the NIH that we can take advantage, because then it helps both parties.
Ryan, any last thoughts on this one?
Yeah, our industry is unique in that we're an infectious disease. So there's a lot of government money put at infectious disease, and that can help de-risk assets. A lot of your faculty are probably tapping into some of those funds. We can kind of help turbocharge that a little bit, and that's kind of part of the deals that we do. Looking at things that have good viability for government funding, is the government will help de-risk it if it's a good asset.
And there are TRL levels, these technology readiness levels you probably have heard of, these DoD groups put out. And there are TRL 1 where they actually want to put money, like DARPA. They want to put money into crazy stuff that's never been invented, invisibility cloaks or a pan-virus antimicrobial. And they will dump money into early crazy ideas because it may actually make it. That's where you can also get funding for something that almost has no data at all.
How are we doing, Tanya? Was that a good answer for your question?
Yeah, I mean, for SBR and STTR, so I mean, we do a lot of that to form early stage startups, but usually any sort of licensing deal, we can't get to that stage. We can't get IND, we can't have tox studies. And even the companies that I often talk with, they want it to be further along, and there's like no other funding stream besides SBR or STTR. And it doesn't make sense to form a company with someone doesn't want to start one. So I'm just wondering, I don't know, how do we get our foot in the door if we're never far enough along?
You need direct investment, like via an SRA. I mean, we've done that with groups at UAB, sponsored research agreements. You know that, where then the company will invest money in hopes of license rights once it's been developed. And that, of course, requires an interest from the commercial side, right? That there is a future product. And sometimes we can't see it. Sometimes it looks like a pipe dream, and then we just don't want to invest. And that is the problem. We have to convince us that there is an actual product and a return of value.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you so much for asking it. Any other questions for the team here? We have about 3-4 minutes left.
I actually have a kind of a follow-up to that for Tanya. So in my job, I have a lot of eyes on a lot of different spaces. And one of the things that I've seen be kind of successful in what you're asking for is for the university to host like a pitch day of technologies that are not quite there, but ready for somebody to come on board as an entrepreneur and do a startup around it or a spin out around it. But maybe your academic professor is not willing to take that risk themselves, or they're still embedded in their laboratory or whatever resources they have encumbered within the university. So you're looking for an entrepreneurial team. So there can be like a pitch day around that, but then you also have in your back pocket the MBA programs. So we at the FLC have a program that's called Flex, and it's a opportunity for federal research to go into MBA programs. We essentially provide a list of like TRL 2-3 technologies that the technology transfer officer feels has legs. Like this is something they're really excited about, or they want to have more information around. And we give it over to MBA students who do projects around it, and then they can come back with feedback to that technology transfer office. So you probably have an MBA program where you are, and you could utilize something like that. I'm sure you do. But we've just seen it be successful to have even entrepreneurs come out of that where they have licensed that technology and formed a company around it. So I don't know, it's hard.
That's a
It's
good point
definitely hard.
Corin makes. I'm sorry to interrupt. That's a very
No,
good
go.
point. We spun out Oncoceutics from UPenn back when I was actually a postdoc. We did stuff with Wharton. They had the same sort of program. We built business plans. And they actually eventually raised capital, and you can look at Oncoceutics got sold. So that actually works. It seems fluffy because you're working with students. Like, will that ever work? It actually does, because you make use of this pro bono work. They get experience, and you get free business plan built by students who actually know what they're doing in finance. And that helps, especially for investigators which aren't interested in even going into that life. You can kind of push them over the line with additional professional help that's actually at your university.
Yeah, and we've also seen it help in pivoting business plans too for the technology. So we had an example where some of our folks at the CIA were interested in a particular field, but they didn't quite know what to do with what it is they were looking for. So they had the students explore that field for them, do customer discovery, brought it back to the researcher, and the researcher was like, oh, that's really interesting. Maybe I should go in this direction with it. And now they're kind of pivoting what that technology originally looked for so that it can have more commercial value. So lots of kind of creative opportunities for you.
Great. In our last minute together, last thoughts from Jamie, Perdita, Matthew, and Ryan. Any last thing that you wish you wanted to tell academia about how to work really well with Tech Scouts? Jamie? Yep.
Yeah, I'll go. Just contact me. And I want to, this is what I do. It's for the part of what I do for the company, and access the investigator, even a 15-minute call. I mean, I mentioned 30, 15 is fine. So always reach out to me.
Thank you. Perdita.
Yeah, ditto. I will be your shepherd for within CSL. I'm your point of contact. Just reach out. I'm a friendly person. I'll guide you. So don't be afraid and don't wait. Just drop me an email. Wonderful.
Matthew, Ryan.
Yeah, exactly. It's volume. What James had said. You could reach out to us. The worst can happen. We're just not interested. We part ways. But I mean, we're always doing screening. We're always looking for new opportunities, especially academic institutions. That's where the real good stuff is, because it's so early and unknown, and it's not real developed. So you can kind of put your spin on it. So you just reach out and get it in front of our face, and that's that's the first step.
Yep, our emails are in the chat, and we look forward to hearing about what you guys have that we could work together on.
Great. If you guys want to add your emails in the chat again, Perdita, Jamie, if you want to add that in, that sounds awesome too. Well, great conversation today. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate everybody taking the time to actually have this great conversation. We'll go back to just have a quick close in our main room. So I see that I have a leave room button that I'm going to push to move to the other segment. I'll see you guys on the other side. All right, Ruben, everyone is coming back into the space. Just wanted to see if there was any top tips that you learned from the conversation in your breakout room.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. It was a good discussion. I think, I was with Sharon and David and myself, and I think we coalesced around 3 themes. First, there was a question raised about how do you work when you're cut in the middle between a company being interested in a technology and a PI being too busy, maybe a little bit reticent, reluctant to work with industry. What can you do? We spoke about a couple of things. We spoke about maybe the tech transfer office providing a non-confidential summary based on a high-level understanding of what the opportunity is. And I guess you could say, we develop, should say, novel compounds to treat X disease by Z pathway, if you know it, right? Or you could say we don't know the mechanism. And those compounds are easier to synthesize or than the existing compounds or something like that, right? You in the tech transfer office, you have the power to do that and share that information without spilling, any secrets or the guts. And that would help us kind of, get, going to a more deeper understanding and moving forward. We also suggested, we talked about perhaps, referring the PIs to other PIs that we work with within the institution or other institutions. And finally, we offer the opportunity for any of us Scout to go and speak to their PIs, do a webinar like the one we're doing here right now, but to your PIs. We talked about how to better position NCDs for tech transfer, for licensing Scout like ourselves. We spoke about perhaps, don't worry so much about trying to come up with the value of the technology, because we don't expect you to know the value of the technology, but you should really identify where do you think that technology fits within the pipeline of those companies that you're reaching out, and why. You are the scientific experts in the academia. That's why we come to you, right? And you should know who your competition is, and you should tell us what the competition is. You should be very transparent in that. So those are very effective NCDs for us to understand. And then finally, David and Sharon gave a couple of examples of successful collaborations between their organizations and academia.
Well, that sounds great. Yeah, so we had a similar conversation. I think the takeaway was look for gap funding in between those that are just trying to get up to a certain point to be shared, as well as talk directly with the folks there. So the panelists have shared their emails into the chat if you're looking to have like a 15-minute conversation just to find out where you are. If other panelists want to share that too, that would be great for everyone to have. Well, wonderful conversation. We have recorded this and we'll share this recording with all of the attendees so that everyone can hear the full presentation. Any last words from you, Ruben?
I just want to thank our sponsor. I learned quite a bit about what they do. Thank you for joining us. I want to thank every one of the panelists. I've worked with some of you in the past. Some of you I met for the first time. It was really a pleasure to be here. Thank you for all of the people in tech transfer who joined us today. We know you're really busy, but we hope that this was productive, and feel free to please give Adam feedback on the format of this webinar and what would you like to see done differently or better.
Great stuff. Thank you all again. Don't forget that the autumn annual meeting is going to take place in Austin this year on the February 20th through the 22nd. Would love to see you all there. We will be having live Connect and Collaborate, as well as a partnering forum focused on precision ag and cultivars. So just want to put in a plug there. Looking forward to seeing you. Have a great rest of your fall, and we will talk more later. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.